Citizens of Russia are currently being stripped of their freedoms of expression by the government, which is a crucial violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Article 19, which states that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes the freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media, and regardless of frontiers. The two biggest issues with this right in Russia currently is the government's censorship of the media and the laws restricting the freedoms of LGBT members. Throughout the history of Russia, there have been countless examples of citizens' restrictions and government censorship. During the time of the Soviet Union in Russia, citizens were unable to express themselves in many ways, which included a strict censorship of literature, images, film, and other media sources, as well as a ban on homosexuality. And even after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the censorship in Russian media, as well as the illegality of homosexuality, persisted. Nearly all attempts of protest or backlash against these laws have been met with hostility and severe punishments by police forces. In 2009, Amnesty International, a non-profit human rights protection organization, reported that human rights defenders, journalists, and lawyers who spoke openly about human rights abuses face threats and intimidation. The police appear to be reluctant to investigate such threats, and a climate of impunity for attack on civil society activists prevailed. This report shows the true level of corruption and oppression in the Russian government. In any country, it is the role of the government to protect its citizens and maintain their well-being. By threatening and intimidating its own people, and hesitating to act upon such threats, the Russian government has failed one of its most important tasks. Since the government has implemented such harsh restricting laws on its citizens, it has brought on many protests and criticism by the people. As groups and individuals combat these laws, it only causes the government to further reinforce them, which then only aggravates the people even more. This essentially creates a vicious cycle in which the people criticize Russia's oppression, only to have the oppression become stricter. For the past century or so, the governments of countries all over the world have tended to become more tolerant of individuals' own choices of expression and representation, along with their freedom to gain information as openly and as easily as possible. While it is true that there are some countries that hold a much firmer stance on these issues of expression and censorship than other countries, society across the world as a whole has become more accepting and tolerating of self-expression, and more progressive when it comes to an open ability to gather information for oneself. In many first world countries, different LGBT groups are acknowledged, and awareness and tolerance are taught. Plus, nearly all of these first world countries have practically unrestricted media access, other than when it has to deal with safety reasons. This openness and acceptance allows for a better trust between the government and the people, as well as a more peaceful and happy environment for the citizens to live in. If Russia were to adopt these more liberal policies, then not only would their citizens be more content, but the level of trust between the people and the government would greatly improve. This happiness and build of trust is an essential part in what makes a functioning government effective, and what Russia so greatly needs. In order to improve the state of human rights in Russia, there must be a certain level of trust between the people and their government, and the people must be satisfied with the quality and effectiveness at which their government functions. This can be achieved by repealing all laws that discriminate against LGBT relationships, change the mass media regulator registration law, and reevaluate the charges of hooliganism. There currently are several laws in effect in Russia that directly discriminate against LGBT members. A law passed in 2013 states that any showing of non-traditional relationships, as in heterosexual relationships, is considered as propaganda. Punishments include fines up to $20,000 for NGOs and corporations, and detainment and deportation for foreigners. This greatly inhibits individuals' freedom of expression and their happiness, and so it is essential for the government to repeal these laws in order for Russia to progress their human rights. The Russian government also constituted a law that says if any web page has more than 30,000 daily visits, it is considered a mass media outlet and must register with Russia's Federal Service for Supervision of Communications. These mass media outlets, many of which are simply private blogs, are required to follow the same regulations that govern Russia's largest media outlets. Plus, online companies and organizations are required to allow the government authorities to access users' information. Hugo Williamson of the organization Human Rights Watch says that the internet is the last island of free expression in Russia, and these draconian regulations are clearly aimed at putting it under government control. Not only does this law take away individuals and groups' rights to privacy, but also their rights to gain information as freely as they choose. Therefore, this law should be repealed as well. Finally, the charges of hooliganism in Russia should be reconsidered, as arrests that are made under this charge much of the time can be arbitrary and unwarranted by the government. Nearly every protester who has been arrested by the Russian police has been charged with hooliganism, which even includes peaceful demonstrators that the government does not want attention drawn to. If these three issues could be resolved in Russia, then the government and the people would have a much closer, trusted relationship, where the current human rights violations can be solved.